Well, if you're trying to arrange that fine stuff at the top, it's funny.
We're just on the internet. Which might be important.
That's the other one.
There we go. This is a square song.
So your, you can edit some your video's a little blurred.
Yeah, you can. We turned off the video just for a moment.
Okay. It's a little blurred when you bring it back on.
Well, we'll fix that when we bring it back on.
I know that.
Okay.
Ta-da!
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the 41st CALLERLAB Convention in Reno, or Sparks, near Reno, Nevada. Today is Monday, April 14th, and this is the Digital Music Transitions session. I am Michael Maltenfort. I'm your moderator. Your panelist for today is Barry Johnson. So thank you for coming to this session. You all set there? Okay, great. So let me say a couple words about what we're doing and where we're going, and then I'll introduce Barry, and he'll have some things to say. I'll show you some things as well. So the idea here is we're hoping that those of you who are here have some experience working with music editing, or at least adapting, that you've worked with electronic music in some fashion or other. You have it, and if you haven't, then we'll just be assuming a couple things that you may not be familiar with, and bear with us for that, I would ask. So if you've already had the experience of recording vinyl, of using some music that perhaps was never recorded for square dancing, but you're using it for square dancing, sometimes you have music that isn't exactly, got that all under control? Sometimes you have pieces of music that aren't exactly what you'd want. There's something that, oh, it's not really going to sound good on the floor, or that section's not going to work so well, or it's too short, or it's too long, or the beginning doesn't work very well. How do you adapt for that? How can you still use a piece of music that might be very attractive?
Yes.
So,
You just turn off the sound on a temporary basis.
okay. So there's a lot to be said, but part of what we want to do is show you some of the technical tricks that we've used, and Barry and I have not worked together in terms of editing, but he's had his experiences, I've had my experiences, and we just want to share with you, here's the sorts of things that you can do, and here's how we can do it. So, I guess my biggest suggestion is to first see what music excites you. What things make you want to tap your toes. What just really is cool. One of the pieces of music that I use because I was in an airport waiting a long time for whatever flight I was waiting for, and I heard this thing that was playing over the speakers, and I was like, we could dance to that. That would be fun. And of course, it's not like there was any playlist, and I didn't have an app for my phone that would record it and tell me what piece of music it was, but I wrote down a couple of the lyrics, and I Googled the lyrics, and I found the song. It wasn't that hard, because I'd written down enough lyrics that, and I'm not good at picking them out, that I was like, oh, there's the piece of music, and I bought the piece of music, and I used it. It was great. So things that make your toe tap, things that are like, yeah, this would be fun, you know, think about that. But that's a different story. Let's now get in a little bit more into, okay, what do you do if you find a piece of music that you want to use, and it's got a little bit of a problem, it's not quite what you want. And Barry's going to talk about that first, but let me introduce him. This is Barry Johnson. He lives in Lake in the Hills, Illinois, which is a distant suburb of Chicago. I'm also from Chicago. Barry has been calling for 8 years. He's been dancing continuously since 1999, which I guess makes it about 15 years, but that was his second go at it. He also was dancing 78 to 82 or something like that. Barry is very active in a lot of organizational things in the Chicago area, and he puts in a great deal of time to the square dance activity. Was inducted, he and his wife Anita were inducted as members of the Illinois State Square Dance Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, which is great to honor their service in the Chicago community. He's been working to help organize state conventions. He is the business chair of the 65th National Square Dance Convention in 2016 in Des Moines. So he's up to a lot of things, and he's a great mind technically. He's giving a session later during this convention talking about the relationship part of phaser, and he writes very well. He's got a lot of things that he's written that he's made available and that are of great help. So I have a great deal of respect for Barry, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about what he's going to do. So please welcome Barry.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Let's see. I think I need the audio cord.
You can have it.
All right, very good. And that plugs in. We've had to switch computers here at the last moment to work with the video projector, and I haven't fired up this computer in a year or two, so I'm a little bit. Let's see.
Doing updates.
Oh, we lost power. We lost power. Hang on.
Break out the vinyl.
One of the reasons I abandoned using this computer back in the dawn of time was that the battery was dying. It would no longer hold a charge. And what happened just now was the power cord came unplugged, and the battery, which no longer holds a charge, no longer held a charge. So it is rebooting here for just a moment. Michael, this is going to take a minute or two. Would you be willing to jump in and go for a bit? Go ahead, do yours now.
Okay. Why don't you give me the video cord then? So I'll need video and audio. Some of you, while we get started, give me the audio first, if you will. Pardon us.
You need a class on chord management.
Exactly. So this is a piece of music that some of you may recognize. It's been very popular for several years, and people use it for different things. And as you can hear from this part, there's some things that you might not want to be using if you're dancing, because all of those lyrics can be rather distracting. So my overall aim, can you play? So what I was interested in is to use this music, and I have been using this music for years. I've done this cut many years ago. But to take out some of the stuff that I didn't like so that I could suddenly use a piece of music that can get the crowd jumping and moving. It's been absolutely fabulous for outdoor events. So you're doing some sort of a demo outdoors, and the crowd recognizes this, and the dancers recognize this, and so it can be very good. So it was well worth the effort. But let me just say, the stuff that I'm going to be showing you, which is how to get rid of this stuff in the middle, can take a lot of effort. So the first thing that you need to do in general to use a piece of music like this and to make certain edits is be incredibly familiar with the music. So I had it playing as many of you were coming in today for a reason. I wanted to get it into your ear. I listen to music a lot. If I like, oh, I'm going to use this, and I'll just listen to it again and again and again and again and again, because sometimes I don't know what I'm listening for. I mean, I know some of the stuff I want to get rid of, but I have to have the sound in my ears. I have to have it has to be incredibly familiar to me before I even want to do something fancy like taking out a section. I have a general sense of it. So just have it in my ear. That's why I've had it playing and now have it playing, is to have some idea what it sounds like. Then what I do is, when I'm ready to start actually working with the music, I do just sort of a very basic analysis. I play it once through, which takes me, 4 minutes or something like that, if that. And I make a list of, what are the sections? What am I actually listening for? So I'm going to bring up, I don't do this in Vic's program's Cedar Square Dance system, which is what's been playing the music up till now. Let me get rid of that. Oh, how perfect the song just ended. Let me get rid of this screen. And so what I'm using for my editing is Audacity. So I've Audacity. A-U-D-I, it's pretty much phonetic, and if I weren't standing up here with the mic, I could...
A-C-I-T-Y.
Well, that wasn't on the mic. We were trying to do things on the mic, so remember, do it on mic. Go ahead, Alan.
A-U-D-A-C-I-T-Y. Audacity.
There you go. So, sounds like he was in a spelling bee. So, it's a free download. Audacity has been around for several years. Many of us use it. And it can be used to do music editing and changes and so forth. If you're not familiar with it, definitely it's worth your time to get familiar. So I play it in Audacity, and one of the things that can be challenging about Audacity is just sort of managing what you're looking at. So what we're looking at now is the entire track of music, and if I simply play it from the beginning and hope that it... You can sort of see that the lines are lower now. The vertical line is where we are currently in the music. Thank you, Barry. And you'll see, it looks different in just a moment of time, and that's because it gets louder. Y'all ready for this? And you can hear that big beat, and that's what you see visually there. And part of the challenge in terms of editing music is to connect what you're seeing with what you're hearing so that you can actually locate a point of music. So for example, when I've just played the music, and this wasn't done... Oh, and by the way, this session is being video recorded, so everything that we're doing, you'll be able to see what's on the screen. This video recording, I'm told, will be distributed with the MP3 recordings. So you'll be able to see that recording. And I know that vertical line's sometimes hard to see. But so we're now about... Let me zoom in a little bit. And I'm not going to show you all of the zoom in commands and some of the keyboard commands that I use, and these are things that I'll let you find for yourself. But we're about, as you can see, the green bar at the top at about 30. There's a green bar, if you see my cursor, right here, and that's showing us where we are, and if I unpause it, and that's where it starts getting to a section where I really don't want to use. And so as I went through my analysis, I said, okay, at this time, and that's about 32 seconds, is when we started. I just wrote down verse, because, you know, it sounds like a verse to me. It doesn't really matter what words you use, so, or you can just say begin cut there. But you need to identify where you want to begin a cut, where you want to end a cut. And then we're going to basically splice out that part of the music. And the question is, you know, how do you splice it out so that it actually sounds good? And to some extent, you know, you could be just rather crude and just get rid of it somehow, and I can show you how to just get rid of it. And then it'll sound like the music jumps, and that's not great for the dancers. It's also not the end of the world. Many of us still remember when people would pick up the needle off of the record and put it down. The times, but maybe the expectations are a little greater, and we'd like it to sound good. And that's what I want to show you, is how to manage that. So, Step 1, be familiar with your music. Step 2, analyze your music so you have a list, and there are basically 3 places in this particular music that I had to make cuts, which is a lot of work, and yet I really love this piece of music for outdoor stuff, so it was worth it for me. If you make 1 cut, you know, maybe that's enough. You know, don't get ambitious at the beginning. Choose a piece of music that doesn't need too much work. Work with it, and you know, get a little experience. So don't jump into something that needs, for instance, 3 cuts. And I'm only going to show you 1 cut. I'm going to do a lot of talking, so it might go a little faster if I weren't. If you want to be changing the tempo, do that before the sorts of cuts that you do. And I think Barry may be talking about changing the tempo, but you want to start off having already fixed those things so it's at whatever beats per minute that you'd like to use. It can cause additional difficulties if you do that later. And I'm not sure if it makes a difference, but I like to normalize my volume, whatever that means, and don't worry if you don't know that, but if you do, I usually do that at the very end of the process in case there's things that I'm doing that cause it to be a little too loud or a little too soft. And the other thing in terms of general plan is I make the cuts in order, in the sense that I cut out the first part of the music that I want cut, and then the next, and then the next. I don't start at the back of the music and work forward. Because of the types I cut, the way I do the cuts, the way I'm going to show you, it would be awkward, it would be difficult to work in the other order. So I work from the beginning forward. I will show you how I cut the first bit of music. So, I decided that I want to cut this music starting at, I'm going to just click about at 30 something, which is where we are here. If you can see the vertical line, and you can see that here above, it's also here below, a little harder to see. And whoops, I was trying to play from that point. And that's about where I want it to be back, that I want to cut. In order to do these, I count with the music. So I usually do this on a downbeat of some sort. I usually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll make my cut at 1, and I'll make my other, that'll be the beginning of the cut, and I'll identify some other 1 downbeat, and I'll make those cuts in those places. For me, it's easier to hear that. So if I count with the music, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So any place that I said 1 is probably easiest to make a cut. And that's because I have to align 1 with where I'm starting the cut with 1 where I'm ending the cut. And it gives me a way to align what's happening. Because what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to go a little bit forward. And in my notes, it was about at 45 seconds that I would want to start using it again. And somehow I've done something. Why am I not seeing? I don't know why that happened. There we go. For some reason. Yes. You're also seeing the same thing. Yes, those of you who know Audacity are seeing that it's weird, so we haven't gone anywhere. I'm just going to reopen it in hopes that that fixes the problem. If you didn't notice what was wrong, Richard was there with me saying, that's weird, it shouldn't be going that way, and it shouldn't. So hopefully if I open it a second time, it certainly didn't when I was alone, but you know, when you do it for a group, that's when it doesn't work. So here's the entire piece of music. Here we are at about 30-some seconds at the beginning of the cut. And here I'm going to click at about 45 seconds. And let's count at the end of this. Get back up to where I was just a moment ago. Play it from the same point I was at. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's do that again. And I'll show you which one that I'm going to use for the end of this cut. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's that last one. I didn't say it fast enough. I'll do it again because I didn't catch it fast enough. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's where he goes, ready, ready, ready for this. And that's where I didn't have to do it to there, but I decided, oh, I could have the dancers go, ready, ready, ready for this. That sounds good for dancers. So I'd like to keep that if possible. Sometimes I make cuts and I'm like, I work hard and, oh, this didn't work. And in fact, you know, I did this particular music years ago and I pulled it out a couple weeks ago knowing that I was going to make this presentation. I tried to make a cut and I'm like, I worked with it for about 15 minutes and I'm like, I can't make this work. And I tried a different spot and I'm like, oh, that works now. So sometimes you try things and, you know, there's definitely a lot of trial and error. So, here's what I'm going to do. This is some of the stuff that I'm not going to use. I'm going to copy everything from where I am right now to the end of the track, or actually I'm going to cut it. This is like a cut and paste that you do in a word processing document. I'm going to cut it out and then paste it below. And let me show you that.
Okay.
Hard to keep the mic. I don't have a, yeah. Thank you. So here's a cut. I'm using Control-X, which many of you know is a cut, and it's also on some of the menus. If I show you the entire track, it's only 35 seconds. I'm going to paste it with Control-V down there. Now if you look at the whole thing, what we're seeing on the top, I'm going to make this smaller so we can see everything all at once. By the way, the reason there too is that this is a stereo track, and I really don't care about that, but that's, you got right and left channels at the top, right and left channels at the bottom, and now we can get this all in one view. Good. So on the top you see everything that was up to the 40-some seconds, and then I cut it out from the top and I pasted it below, and so if I, and these buttons right here in Audacity, mute and solo, I can mute the top one, it's gray now, and if I play the bottom track from the beginning, that's all the stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Ah, that was it. So that's the part that I want to use for the end of the cut. So what I'm going to need to do is to move that cut so that it lives in the right place. Excuse me, Barry, I'm just going to walk over. So this is about where I want the end of the cut to be. And I'm going to move this piece of music until it's exactly aligned so it'll sound smooth. And I'll get rid of everything that has that verse in it. Thank you, Barry. So here's what I'm going to do. I need to figure out, I have a lot more music. I haven't actually gotten rid of anything, so part of the verse is on the top tracks, part is on the bottom, and I'll have to get rid of that, but it's always easier. This is an important tip, to have more music than you think you need, and you can always cut it later, you know, but you never want to trim it down too much because then you'll have to start from scratch. So I'm going to zoom in on the top track.
Wow. Okay.
I'm zooming because I want to know where that track is where it's going to end. It was about 32 seconds, I think, where I want my cut to begin. Let's play the top track only. I can do it that way. Don't worry about the buttons, but the one that's blue is the one that you're going to hear. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I decided, this was the thing that I did in advance, is I'm like, that particular place wasn't so great. I'm going to back up, and I'll show you where I'm going to make the cut. It's going to be a downbeat of where I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It just worked out easier for me. Let me show you again, because I think I said that backwards. 3, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was right here. And let's look and see exactly where that was. Or it's about at 31. How do I know that? Because I put my little cursor there and I played from there. Whoops. I think the downbeat might have been here. And how am I judging that? Because the loud stuff is the stuff that's wider, that's bigger. I play from there. What sounds like the beginning of downbeat 1? Maybe this one? Ah! That sounded like the beginning of beat 1. And I make a note to myself, I usually write this down, it's just a little bit past 31.0. Okay? Where I am right now. Oh, and it's also, as Barry's saying, showing me in the bottom. I used an earlier version of Audacity that didn't have that stuff at the bottom, so I never think to look at that new feature that's there, but it's there. So, zoom out. And now I've got to figure out where I want my cut to end. So I'm going to play the bottom track. A little zooming in. We're looking for ready for this thing. There it was. I'm going to put my cursor there, zoom in, and see if I can get it a little more exact. I think I got a little too far. I back up. There it is. Put my cursor there. Let's see if that's about right. There it is. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. My cursor is where I want the cut to end, at the end of the verse. And I know I want the beginning of the cut to be at just past 31 seconds. So I'm leaving my cursor there. And if Barry, you want, it's pointing to the cursor right there. That's where I'm moving it from. And then I'm going to move it to. That point now has to shift to be just past 30 seconds. So, if you can see the tool that I'm using on the very top of the screen, it's a horizontal bar with 2 arrows. I've now selected it. That allows me to move the bottom track. And I'm going to place the cursor exactly where I'm moving from, and where I want to move that to just past 30 seconds. So I grab it, the cursor stays where it is, I don't care. Where I am now should be just past 30 seconds. That should be pretty close. Let's see how we've done. So, let's play just the top track at about 30 seconds. Whoops, a little zooming in so we can see a little past 30 seconds. Okay, so let's put the cursor here and play. I lost the place of where I wanted, so sorry. This happens because I'm holding a microphone and nothing works as well as you want it to when you're holding a microphone. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. One, two, three, four. That was it. This is the place I want the cut to start. Okay, now let's see. 3, 4, 1, 2. I could have done it there. And it was just, I think I actually tried to make it the later place earlier and it didn't work out well, and this is a lot of trial and error. But now let's see how close. Let's play the bottom track from exactly the same point and see if I'm close. Ah, I'm close, but not that close. Ready, ready, ready for this. Which I think was about here instead. So I have to move that to where I wanted it. So let's just do a finer shift to be about there. That might be close. Now let's play it from the place where I want the cut to happen and see if I've aligned it. Get my blue on the top only so we can hear only the top track. Zoom in a little bit, because the point is I'm sort of narrowing in on this. So this is where I want the cut to start, down beat 1. Okay. And for the bottom track, let's see what that sounds like. It's here that I want. So I want to move this, where my cursor is down here, just a little bit to the left. Okay? And it's all about just making a finer and finer tuning. I think that's going to be pretty close. Okay? So, we're pretty close. Let's just verify that, and then I'll show you how to make it actually smooth, and two things that I'll do to make it smooth. Oops, I'm playing both tracks, but didn't mean to play both tracks. Got top track only. Okay, so there's where I want the B1, okay. Bottom track. Yeah, I know, I got all the things. There we go. And I moved the cursor by accident. It should have been there. Good. Ready, ready, ready for this. Very close. Playing the top track only. Sounds like it's pretty closely aligned. Here's what I do now. I play both tracks at once, because I want the beat to be smooth. Let's see what it sounds like if I just turn it on both tracks at once. It sounds pretty awful to me. It sounds like I'm playing two things at once in a bad way. Here's what I'm looking for. I'm going to make a slightly finer tuning adjustment so that it sounds more like two kids doing a round, like row, row, row your boat. It should sound like they're working well with each other if I've got it right. So here's how I'm going to do that. Top track. This is the beginning of beat 1, if I got my top track correct. That's where beat 1 is. I'm going to zoom way in. Not quite that far. About that far. That's the beginning of it. But on the bottom track, it's more like here.
You see where these aren't quite aligned.
Exactly. So,
the height.
Right.
yeah, so let me, I think Barry just showed you, which was great, but I'm going to show you also. This is where it gets big. It's just a little bit past where this is, so I'm going to align where this gets wide and where this gets wide. It's just off by just a little bit, and that's why it sounds not quite right. So a little bit of fine tuning. I'm going to blow it up just a little bit more, so I have, yeah, see how on the top it gets loud a little earlier. So I'm always moving the bottom track. I didn't mention that, but I'm always moving the bottom track. And now that they're aligned, if we're lucky, it's going to sound like a round, like a children's round. Let's unzoom a bit so we have. They're both going, but they sort of work with each other. It's a bit confusing, but the beat is right. So now here's what I'm going to do to finish the job, because we're most of the way finished, and I want to let Barry have a chance to say something too. This is why I want him to go first, because I was like, I knew this was going to take a while. we have to find again where the cut is supposed to happen, and I'm going to eliminate the top track from that cut on, from that cut forward, and eliminate the bottom track from that point backwards. And that'll exactly fix it. Now, the cut point I think was here, but I can't remember. Oh, play only the top track, because otherwise I have no idea what I'm listening to. Oops, it was here actually. There's where the cut. Play it again from there. Yep, that was the beat 1. And just to make sure that it's right, the bottom track, yep, they're both at the beginning of beat 1 right there. So the easiest thing I can do, and this is what I'm going to do for today, is let's take the top track, and from this point forward, I'm going to silence it. So I'm going to highlight all of this, and I really should highlight to the end, but I'm just not going to be lazy. And yeah, but I want the view to stay the same. So on the edit menu, you can use remove audio, and the thing you're looking for is silence audio. I'm not looking to make any cuts. This is especially important for the bottom track. It'll just go to 0. And I should have highlighted all of the rest of the track also, but that's the idea of making a cut. And from the same point backwards, on the bottom one, I'm going to go left. Let me get a little bit more there. And this is where it's important to do silence, because if I simply cut, everything to the right of the highlighted region will shift left. And that'll be bad, because I've taken such trouble to align it correctly. But I do it this way because I never know quite how the transition's going to go. There's my silence. Let's see how this sounds. I'm playing both tracks, but of course at the beginning you'll only hear the top track, and at the end you'll only hear the bottom track. Ready for these. Not bad. Ready for these. And the only other thing that I'll show you is, because it's just a minor variation of what I just showed you, sometimes I'll keep a little bit more. I'll make the transition point just a little bit earlier. Let's cut from here, or silence from here. But I'll have a little bit of an overlap. And on the effects menu, we can fade in or fade out. This sometimes helps if there's a little bit of a different orchestration in one part versus the other, because it sort of transitions from one to the other. So I'll grab this part perhaps, and I'll use the fade out. And you look at what I've highlighted.
Oh, my heavens.
And I haven't changed anything yet. Hold on. I'm going to take this portion. I'm going to fade it out. You'll see it'll look a little different. Ah, yeah, it's getting smaller as you go further to the right. And I'll take this section and I'll fade it in. And you'll see that the beginning of this will get a lot smaller. Fade in. Uh-huh. And that might be a smoother transition in many cases. Let's hear it. Ready for these. It may not have made a difference in this case, but there are enough times that I've done cuts where that transition, that fade in, fade out, can really make it just seamless. So that's a lot of stuff, and I want to leave Barry time, and we'd like some time for questions. If there's anyone who absolutely needs to ask a question now, let's go for it, but otherwise I'd like to have Barry, a couple of people. So we're recording this session, so please take the cordless mic, and it needs to be turned on, but just don't put it in front of the speaker. Great. Please tell us who you are, where you're from, and then ask your question. But let's keep it short so we have plenty of time for Barry.
My name is Joe Gonzalez, Clovis, California. How do you put the music into that section? I have an Audacity, and I cannot put music that I have recorded there, where you have it right now.
You mean to have two different tracks?
No, just one track as a start.
How to get it into Audacity?
How to get it into Audacity. So I have an MP... Is that your question?
No, my question is, how do you put the first two tracks onto Audacity from the computer?
Yes.
Okay, so to get it into Audacity, and I'll go this really quickly, what you want to do is you need to rip it to your computer, and you'll create MP3s on your computer from that, because Audacity cannot read a CD type format. So you rip it, you make it an MP3, and then you with Audacity you open that MP3 file.
The file menu.
Wait, say on the tape, please, Barry.
Repeat for me. File open.
Oh, file open. Under the file menu, you'll open your file. It has to be an MP3 file on your computer, not something from your CD.
Okay.
There was one other quick question. Yes, please. On the mic.
Bruce Lowther from Salem, Oregon. Do you ever put these two sets of two back into one track, or do you leave them like this?
So, great question. So, I have 2 tracks here, and if I were really working this music, I'd make my second and third cuts by having additional tracks that would be below that. In the end product, I'm exporting to an MP3. I'm under the Audacity menu, under File, I would export, and then I export as an MP3, and then it automatically goes to one thing. I would usually keep the MP3, the Audacity files as 2 tracks, 3 tracks, and so forth, in case I realize I didn't quite do it right, because then I could make further adjustments. But in general, so. Last question before we get to Barry. And remember your name, please.
Charlie Fagan, Torrance, California.
Oh, yeah.
In regard to recording it, you did it in stereo. What happens if you do it recording binaural?
No difference.
No difference. Can you still do the same editing
Absolutely.
and everything like that?
Absolutely. Instead of having 4 things, instead of having 4 things that I'd be looking at, I'd have 2 things. One track for the original and 1 track for the pasted one.
Simpler? Or?
Yeah, I just sort of ignore whether it's a stereo or mono. I don't do anything with it because these, our Hilton systems are mono. So.
One quick question, or quick comment there on stereo versus mono. What we're seeing here on the screen is, you'll see a left track and a right track, and a left track and a right track. And when we save that as an MP3, it'll merge the left track together with the left track, and the right to the right. But it's still a stereo recording, okay? The problem is, much of our equipment is monaural. It only does 1 channel. It does not mix the channel. Depending on the cables that you have, it doesn't mix the 2 channels together. What you get is only the left track. And so if you buy popular music, common music, particularly if there's any sort of stereophonic effect, and then you play it through certain equipment, certain cables, you only get the left speaker, and it doesn't sound right. So to answer a question, is it ever better to mix it down to a single track? In some cases, yes. By all means it is, if you've got music that is not the same on both channels.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Well, you have to.
So we're going to change so that Barry has his computer showing. And, great. And so, thank you, Barry.
Let's see. Now, get my video turned on here. It's dark up here. I can't see these keys.
Oh boy.
If I push that key, things change here, things change there. Signal processing. All right. So I'd like to look at, again, at another piece of popular music. This got a couple of examples here to look at fairly quickly. This first example is one of last year's most popular pieces among the on iTunes. It was, I believe, the top seller on iTunes for all of 2013, tuned by the name of Blurred Lines. Some of you may have heard it. Let's just listen to a little bit of it by an artist named Robin Thicke. We have no sound because I muted it. Oh, come on.
How about the chord?
Let's see if it just plays out of the computer.
All this stuff was working earlier. In fact, we heard too much sound. Hang on, I'm going to set the mic down for a second.
Is there volume on the computer?
Do have volume on the computer, do have volume on this. We have that.
Do we have, maybe we'll take a question while Barry is working with the technical stuff. Yes, please come up and pick up the cordless, or hold on.
Hi, Keith Ferguson, Saratoga, California. I noticed you were talking about MP3 files, which of course is what we use when we play the music. I was always under the impression that for editing, and I've done very little of it, it's better to work with a WAV file, and then at the very end convert it to MP3. Yes. Any comments?
Yeah.
I'm not that sensitive if that's... It's not a bad idea. It's probably better than what I do. So that process would be you take your CD, let me know by the way when you're ready, Barry. You take your CD and you'd rip it to a WAV file, which indeed has less loss of information. You'd edit the WAV file. Actually, Audacity has its own format, but it would get richer information probably from the WAV file. And then the final step, you're right, would be MP3. Trevor?
Trevor Day from Manchester, England. Generally, working through on these, if you're working in a digital format, i.e. you're ripping it from CD or MP3, then you can work in Audacity straight away. If you're working from an audio file, i.e. you're transferring it from vinyl or something like that, then it's better to work in either Audacity's native format or in a WAV file, and then convert it to an MP3 at the end. You have less loss.
To kind of amplify on those points, think of a sponge filled with water. If it's a damp sponge, you can squish that sponge down a little bit. You can make it smaller without dripping any water out. But if you squeeze the sponge too far, some of the water drips out, and when you release the sponge, let it go back to its original size, it's not quite as wet as it used to be. That's the way that MP3 works. MP3 takes the full-size sound, squeezes it down, hopefully losing very little music, and then restores it to full size when you play. Now, with respect to working inside Audacity, Audacity itself, internally, as you're working with the music, is in the uncompressed format. When we open up the file, it uncompresses it. It makes it to the full size. You make all your changes, and then you can save it. So technically, an audio file might hear small differences as you go from, if you do multiple compressions and decompressions. Most people won't hear it. And most of our music, frankly, most of our equipment isn't quite that sensitive. But if you're a perfectionist, feel free to work with the uncompressed files, by all means. They take up about 3 or 4 or 5 times as much disk space. That's the only downside. And in fact, you can play the uncompressed files through when you go to use your stuff. Okay, so I managed to repair my sound here on this old laptop. We're once again going to listen to a little bit of Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke. So, this is a piece of music that certainly it resonates with some younger groups. Unfortunately, right there, in that one spot of the music, used a word that some people consider offensive. In that one spot, said, "You're the hottest bitch in the place." And we might not like that. I've heard many callers use this music, they play it, the dancers never notice, they carry right on. But, so let's look at what we might do about that particular case. So, let's see, we're going to zoom in. I made notes last night, spent about 5 minutes looking at this. It wasn't real hard to find it here. We're going to zoom in just a little bit. Again, like Michael said, one of the secrets with working with music, working with sound, is to zoom in. I'm using this plus sign like a magnifying glass up here, where I can zoom in and see the individual beats here, okay? And I can tell you, if we go to select this section of music right here, and I'm going to play just that section, that's the part we don't like, okay? So, by playing around a little bit, I can tell you that from here to right about there, there we are. Wow. There's our word. Okay. Now, you can see that one word here by looking at we've zoomed in enough that you can actually see where the phonetics start and where they end, and you can see actually how the CH blends into the next word. There really isn't a sharp division. So what can we do about this? Well, the very first thing we can do is, like Michael was using on the edit menu, there's a replace with silence type of button. I usually use a little button on the toolbar here. It's got noise, a flat line between it, and then more noise. If I press that, whoop, gone. Okay? So let's go back and just play this phrase once again.
Oh boy.
Okay. We'll turn the volume up just a little more. One more time, we'll play that line. Okay, so The offensive word is gone, but we have this little gap. And now, once again, dancers generally won't notice the gap. You can play that. They dance right through it. The gap is roughly 3/10 of a second.
Wow.
Okay, it's not very long, but we can take that out. Actually, what I found worked out better. I'm going to change my selection. I wrote down these numbers last night. I'm going to go to the bottom here and say that I want to select from 1 minute 29 seconds point 163 was where I. Oops.
Can I interrupt while you do that?
Go ahead, you do that.
While Barry makes his selection, the writing down exactly what seconds you're at is a wonderful thing, because as Barry's doing at the bottom, you can very carefully in Audacity, you'll remember that for later and say, okay, I'm going to highlight exactly this by writing down the seconds, and there's his range.
That's my. Oh, that was the word there. I'm sorry, I wanted to go a different range. I wanted to get that whole phrase out of there. Go from 127.82. I'm down to the 100th of a second. All right. Again, if you want to be picky, you can be picky. It lets us do that. 30.34.
And I tend to be able to hear like 1/10 of a second. 100ths of a second I tend to think is, I can't hear, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do that if that's something you can hear.
So last night I listened to this a few times. It took me about 5 minutes to find this range of values. I'm just going to reach up and press the delete key. Thump. And all of that particular phrase is gone. Now let's listen. We're going to back it up a few seconds and play. Okay, yeah. I don't know if you noticed where that transition had, but it was right before he said, I feel so lucky. That whole phrase, you the hottest bitch in the place, that's gone. The whole phrase is gone. So you can play that. We could have futzed around with it. That took me just a couple of minutes last night to find those spots. We could have maybe spent a little more time and made the transition a little bit smoother. As Michael said, as you want to go in and look at some of this stuff, you can, see, I'm trying to remember, right here I think is where that transition was. We can zoom in on this. And, no, that wasn't the spot. There are times that you can actually zoom in and you can see a very small discontinuity, a very small difference between the music that you're playing. With Audacity, if you are a perfectionist, if you continue to zoom in and in and in further, pretty soon you can start seeing little plus signs on the thing. It's very hard to see on the screen. I can tell you there are little tiny plus signs. These are the individual sound samples, 44,000 of them per second. And you can fiddle with each little sample individually if you want. And actually correct. You get this wave and you can smooth out the little discontinuity that you hear. And you can get rid of any sort of pop or click that might happen when you do your copy and paste. Zoom right in where that is and smooth it out. All right. Yes, sir. Question. Quick question.
I'm Art Parks from 9 Mile Falls, Washington. When you eliminated that whole phrase, it seems like if you're making square dance music, you've eliminated a beat or so.
Yes.
Of your. That's
you've
shorted it.
You've kind of, if we were working with strongly phrased square dance music, typically 8-beat sections and repeated over and over again, dancers would certainly notice when one of those is gone. In this case, in this particular popular piece of popular music, that small interlude was just that. It was a standalone interlude that's not actually repeated inside the music. And so we're okay in that case. We didn't have to worry about taking out an exact number of beats to stay within the rhythmic phrasing of this piece of music. That was only happenstance that this music doesn't happen to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Another question here.
Does the pop or click appear visually different?
Pops or clicks, you would see them visually, yes you would. And it's especially if you zoom in almost to this level, you will see a sharp spike. Like if you're recording from a record, you will see the sound level go from close to the middle like it is here, all the way up to a top or bottom edge, and then slam all the way to the bottom and come back. Personally, I do not use the pop and click removal tools that are built into some of these programs. What do? They look through the sound waves, they're inspecting the waves, and they're looking for anything that looks like it's a real sharp, sudden action. And then they try and figure out what to do about it. Well, maybe that's part of the real music. Okay? The program doesn't know, it doesn't listen to music, it can't make any sort of objective or subjective judgments. We can, as humans, we can say, that's a pop, I don't like that. So I zoom in all the way, and I actually move the dots around and take the pops out myself. I feel better about that. Okay, so I wanted to, we don't want to run over on time here. How late do we go? Till 12? All right, so we got a little bit of time yet. We'll save some for... was going to do my other piece here, if that's okay. Just wanted to show you one other piece of music. If you know Daryl Lipscomb, Daryl used this piece of music on Saturday at the weekend that we were at, and I liked it so much he told me where to go find it, so I bought it last night, and music for session, here we go. Bought it last night, and started playing with it a little bit. It's an interesting piece of music. This is one of the most popular pieces of music this year. This is not the original group that did it. The name of this music is The Best Day of My Life. It's an instrumental version by Magnomatic. Magnomatic. Never heard of them before. Let's listen to the beginning of this. Where's my home key? Switching computers. There it is. Okay. And let's press play. So it's a little bit interesting. Then the lead instrument goes away. We're just left with this beat for a few moments. Longer than I might like. It keeps going on like this for a while, and the dancers are going, ah. But now the music starts to come back. Okay? And then, one more thing we're going to hear here, actually sort of a powerful part of this piece of music, it goes silence right here. And now we're into the more full-throated, this is fun to dance to type of music, okay? There's a couple problems with this piece. First, to be honest, that at the beginning, that drum section went on too long for my taste. Dancers want to hear some music, they want to see some things. It's okay to do that for a little while, but that was just a little too long for my personal taste. And then the second thing, of course, is that this is too slow. If you try to dance to it, you'd find it's just a little too slow. All right, so let's look at how we can play with this a little bit. First thing, let's see, on my notes here. With the rhythm first. I was going to fix the rhythm first here. And on my notes, it says trim from 12.50 to 21.37. Okay, let's see what that says. I'm going to click right around here. Use our tool to zoom in and see the individual beats again. Okay, this is not quite as strong as we saw with some of the other music here. There's a little bit more blur in here. But I pretty much set my marker as Michael did. That's kind of the section, and I can tell you that at roughly 12.5 seconds, 12.507, according to my notes, was the beginning of one of those phrases with the drums. And so I'm going to select from 12.50. Again, I spent a couple minutes last night determining these numbers so I could show them to you, to 21.37. All right? 21.37. So let's zoom out so you can see that I don't have the whole piece of music selected. You can see I've got just one particular chunk selected there. Once again, I'm going to reach up and press the delete key. Gone. Okay, now let's listen from the beginning once again. Huh. Why isn't home working?
Click there first.
Yeah, we'll just...
Click
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Apparently my cursor was down where I typed digits, and that's what was causing the problems. All right. Coming up on that drum section. Now here, there we've got the little instrumental back in again. And you can see, did you feel any beats missing? Did it feel awkward right there? Let's try that again. So you'll hear the drums go for just a few beats, and then that lead instrument's going to come back in once again for us. Here we go. Okay, so that I think, stop it. That kind of, taking out that little bit of music there, I think keeps the dancers' interest in this new piece of music that they haven't heard before, to carry them through. Now that's going to let us bridge the shorter period of drum beats at coming up to the end. They're going to hear that again, but they know it was short. It was short the last time. It's short this time. Then, of course, the dramatic silence. And you hear the swish, swish, swish of the feet, or the stomp, 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 depending on how your dancers dance. Right? And then we get back into it again. Okay, so another thing that we could do on this particular piece, let's listen to the very end of it, if we can. Oops. Get to the very end, listen to the last few seconds, press play. Okay, and then it just fades out. Okay, so let's extend this piece of music. It's right now just a little bit over 3 minutes, and rather than do a loop inside square view or whatever, let's just actually make this music longer. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here on the end, and we can see how it really tails off, and right about here is where it really gets empty. Let me set the mic down for a second. There, okay, I did a shift and press the end key, and it's selected to the end of the file. I'm going to push delete. Gone, okay? Let's go to the beginning. I'm going to press the home key. Oh, look, we've got a tiny bit of space at the beginning. Let's trim off that from the beginning. Just this, small fraction of a second.
My heavens.
Okay, and press delete. Gone, okay. Now our music starts immediately, and it ends right at the end. I'm going to push Control A, that selects the whole piece of music. I'm going to push Control C, that makes a copy of that whole piece of music over there. Now I'm going to push the end key. We'll go off to the end where we saw that. I'm going to push Control V as in Victor to paste it back in. All right, and let's zoom out a little bit. So now we see it fades out and goes directly into our main piece of music, okay? But actually, before we do that, I'm going to generate... Oh, sure, go ahead.
This one? Since Barry and I were both using copy and paste, or in my case, cut and paste, the difference of why I had an extra track down here and why he pasted here is where his cursor was. He clicked right here, then did his paste, so that's where the paste happened. I clicked down here, I didn't make a big deal about that, pasted, which is why I had a new track down here when I pasted. So it was both cases pasting, a completely different effect.
Right. So we had a dramatic pause in our music earlier on in the piece. It was, according to my notes, it was 1.2 seconds worth of silence. That's the only pause like that throughout this piece. But I thought, as I was playing with this, as I was extending it, it might be nice to put in another one of those dramatic pauses here for a moment. So inside Audacity, under the Generate menu, I can say Generate Silence. And the cursor is still where it is. Ooh, you know what? I'd best not have that selected. There we go. Otherwise it would replace what I had with silence, and that's not at all what we want. So I'm going to say that I want I believe well, let's just say 2 seconds. Okay, there's 2 seconds worth of silence, and we could trim out. I'm actually going to trim out a chunk of that because that's a little bit longer than I prefer. And press the delete key. All right, let's go back a few seconds before our end. We'll hear this again. The music's going to start. Well, let's give you a few more seconds of the music here. This works so much nicer with a real mouse rather than the keyboard. There we go. Oh, that's okay. No, it's fine. All right, here we go. This is the real end of the song. 2 seconds of silence, and then we're back into the beginning. That's actually the true beginning of the song. We've really just taken the whole thing and replaced it one after another. Now, we don't have to replace, if we want to extend something, we don't have to replace the entire piece of music. We don't have to pull the entire piece one after another. We can instead highlight, zoom in as we listen to it, as we've been practicing here, find the sections of interest, make a copy of them, and we can insert those sections of interest later on. So if you think of a typical singing call with the 7 different sections of music in there, you can pull out, say, the second and third parts in the middle break, and stick them again right after or just before the final, or something like that. Or you can put the middle break in after the 6th part, put another middle break in, and then put a couple, and then repeat some things after that. You can play around, take these sections of music, and build them up as you wish, as you see appropriate, just to have fun with it. So I think that's sort of in a compressed thing what I had to show. Michael, do you have? Tempo. Oh, tempo. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, this was too slow. Okay, so I pressed Control-A to select everything. Under the Effect menu, there is a change tempo. There's change speed. That's like sliding the knob up and down on a Hilton. When you change the speed, it also changes the pitch. If we can change pitch by itself here with the change pitch menu, or the one I've got selected, change tempo menu. Here we can put in the way that we'd like the tempo to change in a few different fashions. Beats per minute. And this is just any sort of ratio of numbers that you'd like. If you're familiar with using a Hilton, and let's say, and you had the sliding scale on the turntable, and you wanted to go from 45 RPM to 43 RPM, you could actually type in 45 to 43. And it would change it just as if you had slowed down the Hilton that much, or speed it up. In this particular case, for this piece of music, I was futzing with it. Anita was in bed last night watching me as I'm playing the music and prancing around the room, getting the beat to see how it felt to actually dance to it. I don't know what the person below us thought as this guy's marching around the room upstairs. But I found that about an 8% difference if I change the tempo from 100 to 108. Again, these are not meaningful numbers. The only meaning is in how they relate to one another. So I'm just making it 8% faster. And it goes thinkety-thinkety-think here for just a moment. And this whole piece of music, my other computer's faster. I like my other computer better. There we go. Okay, so now let's play it. So this is a little bit faster. We've got rid of the long extended drum section at the beginning. Put in that short section there. We're back to more music. Yep. Michael just took some of the bass out there. There's that other relatively short drum section. We could futz with it if we wanted. Our silence, back into, now this is really dancing. Folks really enjoyed this. We've also extended it, we've doubled the length. We could keep on doing this and play with it however we'd like. That's advanced music editing. Michael, any closing comments?
Let's give some time for questions, because I think we have a couple minutes. But I also want to make a couple general comments, and then we'll take your questions. So think about it if you've got questions. So Barry and I, I don't think anyone taught either of us what we're doing. We futzed around with things until it worked. And so rather than copying exactly what Barry did or what I did, you need to futz around. Like for instance, Barry and I had a completely different, or a quite different approach to cutting out a section of music, because basically what I showed you was cutting out music and making a second track and shifting it over and so forth. And Barry just said, from here to here, get rid of it. And we achieved largely the same thing. His was incredibly shorter, easier, so you might want to start with something like that. But if you decide that, oh, the transition isn't good, I want to be able to have a little more control and have a little bit of overlap, yeah, then that's where the stuff that I showed you might be useful. But most of what we did had a lot of the same feel and a lot of the same effect. The other thing I want to mention, in Audacity, like so many computer programs, your friend is undo. Right? You can undo almost every action you do in Audacity, which is great because you can try things out, and if it doesn't work, if the 8% didn't work, then you try a different percent. And I'm always undoing things because, oh, I didn't quite shift it right, oh, that was actually better. Also save versions as you go. There's nothing worse than working really hard on a piece of music, and for some reason the whole thing is terrible and you can't back up a couple steps. So like for instance, if I were doing some tricky cuts, I might save it after the first cut as a new file. Now I can make the second cut, and if I mess up, I still can rewind to that point. Any other general comments you want to make before we take questions?
One of the things Michael did, he was using the time shift tool to slide music forward and back in time. That's how he was adjusting, taking our bottom piece and moving back and forth across. There's another case where you can use that tool fairly effectively. If you ever try to lay down your own vocals on a track for some reason, maybe you want to produce something that you could use to help teach in lessons, or maybe you want to send in an audition tape to a music producer or whatever. If you wanted to lay down your own vocals, you can certainly do that here with Audacity and other programs. You can play the music and then record your own voice into its own track and so on in the system. If you do that, you will almost certainly find that there is a time lag between when the music plays on the computer to when it comes out of the speaker to when you speak to when your voice gets digitized, okay? That will actually take almost, it will take about 0.3 of a second, almost a full beat to really get through all the buffers everywhere. So if you lay down your own vocals and then want to play it back, you would be distressed to hear how poorly your timing goes. So you can highlight your entire vocal track, which has been recorded separately, and slide it forward and back and line it up. Okay, now that's what they do in the music studio. In fact, they do it not so much on the entire track. They can take individual sections and sometimes even individual words. And so if you want to go through and really polish your timing, you can start moving individual words and individual phrases, and you can futz with them. And if you're really interested, you can change your own pitch on individual words and phrases. That's getting more into some real power editing. And Audacity isn't really the best tool to do a professional job on vocals. But you can do some really cool things with it.
And if you're time shifting your voice, as Barry is describing, you might want to zoom in, you might be able to visually see what aligns. Maybe one question, maybe two if there are any, because we're pretty close to the end of time. Hold on, I'll take off.
Yeah, in regard to undoing it, that's one way to do it, or can you use the arrows on the toolbar?
You can use, I don't remember if there are arrows on the tool. I guess there are. Okay.
Okay.
I usually use the Control-Z to undo. What I've done here is shown that there is a history of changes made, and it will tell you even what those individual changes were, so you can decide how far back you want to go in time. It kind of makes a list of all the changes that you made through there. So,
You got that through the edit?
I got that through, I believe it's View. Let me press OK here, and let's look at View History, right down there.
Okay, I think maybe we should, maybe one last question.
Thank you very much. Art Parks from Nine Mile Falls. In the last demonstration of where you had a pause and started the music all over again. And it came in a different feel to it, the music, as what you ended. And it seemed to me that it would have sounded better with a couple of beats of I'm not asking how to do